Today's video is about Anakin Skywalker's Podracer. This is a re-release by AMT, or Round 2, that is now being put out in fall of 2022. This model should be about 16 inches long when we're done, so let's get started. I'm going to jump right in to building the engines. Now this piece is done with 3 parts. It's got kind of the big nose part here in front, and then it actually will have 2 pieces that get layered together to provide those fins, so there's a little bit of depth to it. There's also 3 pieces here. Once again, you have the nose piece, the cowling, and then you have this disc which holds it behind. And the main body of the engine is done with 4 pieces. Each half has a little insert piece right here that will be set behind it. And our engine will look like this once all of that is assembled. Now, if you're wondering if you're putting these together right, here's a couple things to look for. Across this seam, you see these holes should line up. Now, you want to check and make sure that you've assembled this properly. Now, the actual Podracer fins will attach back here. So if you've done this properly, these holes should each be 1/3 of a way around. And these that are on the seam should be symmetrical going across. And overall, it really does not have many gaps across this part of the engine. Looks like I have a little bit of a gap up here where the cowling meets the body of the engine, but otherwise a pretty solid piece. Now it's time to start adding things onto the engine. So the first part is this structure. It's made up of 4 separate pieces, and it gets put onto the bottom. And you also have these 2 little semicircle halves, which will go on the engine. I believe these are what is eventually going to hold the transparent purple plastic part that holds the 2 pods together. Here you can see that structure added on and those semicircles put on, so you can see how those make a port that we'll be able to put that clear plastic part into. The next step is to glue these little flaps on, and while you're gluing them, you can position them. I'm going to keep mine open just a little bit. And after those flaps, it's time to put on hoses. Lots and lots of hoses. It looks like about 16 hoses for each engine. So all in all, I'm gonna have to put 32 hoses on these. And I'm gonna do that off camera, obviously. And then we'll have the majority of the engines complete. All right, after having put on quite a few hoses to the engines, it's time to work on the airfoils. And you get a couple choices for how they can sit. So you have some that can hold them tight, a few that will hold them out a little bit further but still parallel, and then you have some that will spray them outward. Now, I just rewatched the pod race sequence, and they only really open up when he's braking after he's won the race. So I'd rather have it kind of look the way it was when it was racing, which is going to be open a little bit but still parallel to the engines. So I'm going to use these 3 braces that are in the middle. Moving from the engines to the main body of our racer, I've put together several sub-assemblies. So this is probably about 5 pieces. You can see the back wall there at the cockpit, the dashboard, the instruments, this insert were all separate pieces. This is the undercarriage. You can see a couple pipes added on. These little panels were add-on parts, and you can see there's going to be sides mounted to that. The sides, it specifies that you do not glue these 2 parts together. There's a little hinge. This panel covers that hinge up to keep everything in place, but a little bit of movement there. And a couple other things you do not glue are these control panels. These get pushed through the floor, but they will just kind of sit in those little grooves. And then when you mount this into the undercarriage, the floor of the undercarriage will push up and hold these in place. Here's the undercarriage with the sides and the cockpit put on, and I'm beginning to wonder if these are supposed to move as a feature of the ship, or if that was just to help them fit the curves of the model. It looks like there is a gluing point that you might be supposed to glue them into permanently. But that is the main body of the racer. And the top just goes on it like this. And if you've done it right, these control sticks should be able to move back and forth. With the main body of the racer fully assembled, it's time to do a lot of add-on parts for detail. You can see we'll have antennas, extra body panels, and then a lot of hydraulics and links to hold the chains that will hold the Podracer engines. So I'm going to put on all those parts, and then we'll look at the completed racer. All right, you can see that we have added a lot of detail from those antennas in back, those little dishes, and I found myself having a lot of fun working on these pipes, the hydraulics, the linkage. That was really a lot of fun to see how those parts kind of fit together to provide all of this wonderful structure. Now I have gone ahead and I've added in both to the racer and to the pod engines these cables that will connect the three together. I wanted to do that before I glued it so that I had some really strong connections. So coming up next, we're going to paint the Podracer. Now, if it seems the racer is a little plain right now, especially compared to the Podracer engines, that's because most of the detail and interest here will be provided by the decals. So the decals are going to provide all of those wonderful blue markings for the Podracer body and some of the dashboard controls as well. A couple quick notes about the decals. First, this blue stripe, the third one from the back, it actually goes over one of the antennas. So I had to clip my antenna that would belong right here so I could lay that decal down. I suppose my best advice would really be don't put the antennas on until you fully decaled it, then use a little pin vise to reopen those holes and put the antennas in afterwards. The other interesting thing is this yellow marking are part of this stripe. It's an L shape, which means this yellow part on this decal needs to go over this blue stripe decal. So this yellow part is not part of this blue stripe decal, it's part of this one. So you've got to have this stripe on first and then lay this one down next. I have a lot of wrinkling right here. I'm not quite sure why. I think my microsol may still be at work, kind of softening that up. Hopefully that'll go away. All right, the next thing to do is install our clear windscreen, a very thin piece of plastic here. And the first thing you should know is it actually has some protective pieces on it. So we're going to peel off our protective wrappers. Once you have the clear protectors off, you're going to take the little tab that's at the front of that clear piece, and it should fit between these two parts, just like that. And then you're going to bend the windscreen so it's sandwiched between kind of these two raised fenders, and a little bit of super glue to hold it in place. And that's how you do your windscreen. Hopefully you can see it fitting in place there. So kind of a unique way to do the windscreen on this model. Okay, here is our display base, and we're going to start with our engine. You make sure that this little port, that's for the power coupling, make sure that's on the inside, and the pod engine fits on a wire just like this. There's a hole for that wire right here in the display base, and that's our first engine. Okay, we have our wire in our second one, power coupling port on the inside. And then this is a very nice piece. This is a clear pink purple part that's actually the power coupling between these two. So you're going to fit that right in that little port on both sides. All right, that is a cool little effect. I like that a lot. And we have a fairly long wire. This is going to go at the back of the display stand. And our Podracer, you can see there's a hole right here. That's going to go on that wire. And now I've left these parts of the cables unpainted so far. So I will glue these together. Just like that. Then I will paint it to match the rest of the wire, or the rest of the cable. And we'll have a completed model. This is really a cool model. There's a lot of things I really like about this. I just think, I just really like it. I really like these engines. I love that wash to bring out the detail. I love the colors that they kind of put on the Podracer. I just really think that looks cool. I'm really glad they were able to get all the right details on there. I'm glad they did the extra hoses. I'm glad it fit together well. I just really think that the engines come together really well. And I love the clear pink and purple power coupling there. That is a really neat effect. And I think it really kind of sells the Podracer and how those are held together. So I love the engines. Here's our Podracer ourselves. And you can see the little Anakin figure in there. I like the attention that they did to kind of have these parts still movable and kind of positionable. You can see we've got the decals right there in the dash and in the controls. I do like that they gave you the stripes. These back stripes, you know, if you could find a paint that matched, you'd probably be a little bit better off painting those instead of decaling those. But this one up front, very important that that one's a decal. Like I mentioned earlier, I love this linkage that's underneath that kind of main fuselage of the Podracer. I just really think this comes together really well. Let's put Anakin back in there. If there was something that I don't like about this model, it would probably be these cables. I think I did have a comment on the unboxing video where somebody said, you know, ditch those entirely and use guitar string. That's actually a really good idea. I think that just kind of the stiffness they have and kind of the weird curvage makes it kind of a little bit unrealistic to kind of how you'd want to have it angled. Maybe with guitar string, you could position things a little bit better. But overall, the stand is great. The way they've been able to get these wires to hold each of the three components at their own center of gravity. I really think if you didn't have these cables in here at all, these would all stay in place just like this, just because the center of gravity has been done correctly for those stand holes. So it would not be hard to replace those with a better cable. I had a lot of fun working on this. I love being able to weather things and bring out a little bit of detail. I appreciated how many hoses and add-on parts were part of this model to give it that really nice detail and make it feel like you're spending some time on the model. Much better than ones that you just put together over the course of a weekend and call done. I appreciate all the decals being done for this back part. That way, if you don't want to paint them, you still have a good looking Podracer. And, you know, I don't even mind the little clear windscreen. I thought that that really wasn't going to work out well, and I was thinking a clear styrene piece would be better. But I like the thinness. I like how elegant it is, and I like how well it fits. That tab fits in. It fits under some of these little fender parts. And let's see if we can get another good look at that windscreen. Yeah, that's just a nice little thin piece. And I think that's kind of scale appropriate for this little racer. Now, I think I really ended up taking my time on this build. So it's probably going to hit stores very soon. But I was glad to kind of do this review copy for you so you guys can see the model kit again. Start planning out what you might do on your builds. And like I say, probably the best thing is to ditch these cables, put on something thinner, more flexible. That way you can have a little bit more positionability on those. But otherwise, just have fun building it. Thank you guys for watching this video. Keep your eye out for the Podracer being put out by AMT. And thank you for following the channel.